Thanks for choosing ASK. You picked the world's most modular knife. We want to show you how to take care of your knife so that it lasts you for a generation or two. Care and maintenance is really important, so let's get into it. So, care and maintenance involves a lot of things. If you're going to take your knife apart, service it, clean it, or anything like that, these are the basic tools you'll need for a full teardown or a cleanup. I will rarely take my knife apart. If I do, this is what you need. For the most part, if your knife's dirty, just clean it. So I'll show you some general ideas on how to do that, okay? First things first, everybody's a little different in this regard. If you've got a bunch of schmutz down in here, get some cotton swabs and get in here, work your way down and clean them all out with a cotton swab. To catch dust on these, put a little tiny drop of oil. Don't load it up, just a little bit, enough so that the dust wants to stick to it. You know, once, if you've been out in the field with your knife, maybe what you want to do is at that point, just wipe it down and get in here and wipe out any dust so that it doesn't get in the mechanisms and cause abrasion unnecessarily. You may get down inside of these lightning holes, underneath the pockets of the handles, you may get some debris caught down in there. So you can blow this out with an air gun with some light air pressure. If you get your knife fully submerged in salt water, let's say you clean some fish with it, and it's got that, you know, blood in around here that's got a high saline content, and you just want to take your knife apart and do a really thorough cleanup job. That's kind of what I'm going to show you next, okay? What we'll do to do that is we're going to have some cotton swabs, a microfiber rag, have a cleaning brush like you would for your M4 or M16. This plastic handle is really useful, so something really with a stout, rigid handle like this. You're going to need a number 25 Torx driver for your pivots, obviously. You want to use your oil of choice. Any sort of light machine oil will do. 3-in-1, CLP, frog lube. Some people use grease. Some people use oil. Doesn't matter. Personal preference. I've got a pair of scissors here. I've got a crescent wrench, which you may need to do some improvisational stuff with, which I'll show you in a minute. And I make sure I have some painter's tape or masking tape available. First thing we want to do, let's clear our work area a little bit so that you guys can see what I'm up to. First thing we want to do is make the knife safe. Unless you work with this style of knife, razor sharp, taking it apart every day, there's a high probability of slicing the bejesus out of yourself. So what I highly recommend you doing is cutting yourself and shrouding that blade a little bit. It may seem like a little bit of a wimpy move, but quite frankly, an ounce of prevention is worth hours in the hospital and scars on the hands. So, I recommend you get that blade dulled up so you don't hurt yourself. Let's do a full teardown now so you guys can kind of see how this works. This is if you've got some dry Loctite in here, which you will from the factory, you'll have to pop these loose, unscrew them. These are titanium screws. They're turned here in the United States. We'll set them off to the side. I kind of put the the first things that I take apart on a knife furthest away, and I kind of work my way towards towards the front of me, towards close to me. And then when I go to put them back together, it kind of has a little flow for me that kind of works. If you do a lot of knife assembly and disassembly, it's pretty valuable. Take your first scale off. You might note I left you guys some little Easter eggs on the inside of the handle. Look around. I love to have people find what I put in here for you. It's kind of fun. Just a little cheeky American stuff. You've got a titanium liner. Now this titanium liner is precision fit on here, and these are D-shaped pins and holes. So You got to be careful. You want this knife to last for life. You don't want to hog these holes out while you're taking it apart, torquing on things. So it's got a very precise fit to it, and it keeps the structure rigid like an aircraft fuselage. So what you want to do first is you can get in here with your nail, create a little space, and you want to work it up. You don't want to pull one side off and then the other side. You want to raise the whole thing up so this gap stays really close to this gap you see right here that I'm making. You want this gap to kind of stay the same so you don't hog those holes out. All of this metal is kind of malleable, and sometimes if you've got another tool laying around, you can gently kind of wedge it in here. Now I'm using one of our ASK tools for the knife that we're going to put on in another video, and it's got the similar polish and it's got the hardness, and we know it's not going to do damage. Don't get in here with a screwdriver and do this. You're going to put little marks all over everything. You can just pop it open, and then one side's going to stick on after everything's broken because it's under a little tension. You want to work that off gently without hogging that hole out. And remember, it's got a flat on it, so don't get it free and turn it, or you'll just jack this up and you'll need to replace parts. So that's our first titanium liner off. Now you can see the mechanism of the knife and how it works. You can see the spring here and how the spring opens up as the knife opens and closes. You can see our little locking cam here. You'll feel on all of my tools when they get ready to, they hit a bump before they break. That bump is a little safety for you, to let you know when you're getting ready to pop your tool out of the semi-locked position. You could pop it off like that, or you hold the handle with your hand, grab the tool, and pull it off. Next thing, we're going to pull off the spring. Okay. Next thing, what I like to do from here is I like to pull the stop pin out. You want the blade in the 90-degree position or the full open position to pull the blade stop pin out, so that it's not under the pressure of the blade. Next thing, we have to work out our spine liner. This is another situation where you don't want to hog it out, because this remaining precision and remaining pristine is what allows the knife to have such good fit and form and function over many, many years of use. Remember, this whole thing is under this spring tension, which is actually a pretty large amount of force, and this is the most splayed open it gets in this position where you have one side of the chassis with a full spring and a tool locked into it. This is where we have the most amount of asymmetrical forces pushing on everything. Next, hold it in your palm, hold down on the spring, lift the blade, just a little left and right action, pop it out. Make sure you have the tape on it or you will cut yourself, okay? Next, when I get to this point here, it's hard to grab this, it's hard to grab this, it's all under tension. So at this point, I push this pivot out. You'll notice the pivot, if you look at it up close, you'll notice it's got a flat side on it right here. That indexes, the flat sides go inward, that indexes this pivot, and it creates a little journal where oil rests. It also indexes the pivot so it can't turn. These are also 6.4 titanium. You can push out the other side now. Lift off your blade mainspring. Your central pivot, these are different sizes and not interchangeable. Now you've got your blade spacer, your other titanium liner. So you got two full liners and handles with Easter eggs on the inside, handle scales. So that's a full tear down. Okay, now once you've torn a knife down, let's say you tore it down to clean it. At this point, you would step in and start scrubbing with a brush, maybe some light machine oil, CLP. You might even take all of this and wash it in warm soap and water and dry it all off and get rid of any of that type of debris, and then go in if you've got, you know, let's say this got dropped in salt water, or you went on a 2-week fishing trip and you cleaned a fish on day 3 and it sat with a saline solution on it for the next 10 days. You might get in at this point now and start scrubbing with some 4-0 steel wool. What I do is I take steel wool, I pull a pinch of it off, I roll it into a shape about the size of a pea, and then I take my oil and I soak my oil into that so that you could wring it and oil would drip out of it, and now you can scrub your parts and you won't hurt anything. So you can get in here if there's any staining on the titanium from the stainless, you can stain that. You can get on the stainless around the pivots if you've got any little crevices that maybe have what looks like some corrosion from sitting in salt water. You can scrub those off, clean them up. When you're all done with that, I would soap and water everything again, get inside all these crevices here with a soft brush, clean out the inside of here, gentle, mild soapy water, then dry everything off with your microfiber cloth, and then let it sit out. Put these crevices facing upwards and let this stuff air dry. Let it air dry for an hour, or lay it in front of a window where everything gets totally dry, and then you can start putting it back together. Let's go through the reassembly procedure now, okay? I'll show you just a couple tricks for how I do this and I maintain this flow. This is the most important thing that you're gonna lose, forget, not remember, misplace. I recommend for your surface, don't do this on a hard counter, don't do this on a wooden counter or a stone counter. I recommend you lay out, it's really nice, a white towel, a couple of microfiber cloths so this stuff doesn't roll around. And if you're really organized, you won't put it all back together and forget this guy and miss this guy and dent your blade. So let's do an assembly now. Take the handle scale, I put the logo with the hammer and a musket in my right thumb. I flip it over. I take my titanium. Now your titanium liner can go in any direction. I put the holes away from me. So that's going to be towards the camera, okay? I put the holes away from me. I put my main spring pivot in. Drop my first spring on. Now, what you want to do at this point, little drop of oil here, little drop of oil here and here. These are the major surfaces that are going to rub against this titanium liner right here. Next thing from here, I kind of line this up with my hand and I push in my pivot hardware from the back side. No oil on that yet, sports fans. Okay. I'm next going to take my spacer, my blade spacer. Now this is if you decide to get the breaker or you get the lanyard or get any of the options that go in here, you want to put a little drop of oil on them just for ease of taking it apart next time. So you take your oil, put a little drop inside, and we're going to put this down on this pin. You'll notice this thing is asymmetrical. You've got a thin area and you have a thick area. You want the thin area facing outward. That way when your blade closes, it doesn't hit and dent your edge. You can put this in backwards. If you put it in backwards, it doesn't line up properly. And you'll say, geez, what's up with sloppy ASK? That doesn't look right if you look in here really closely. And so that's obviously not correct, and you've left a bunch of metal to get in the way of the blade closing here. So what you want to do, make sure you put it in the right way. And then you may need to load the spring up just a tiny bit. So now you can see how nicely this fits together like a puzzle piece on the top edge here, and how the opening is maximized for the pocket for the blade. Okay? So from here, we could put our first tool in. Lay the blade in. You can work it at 90 degrees or in the full open position, okay? Now, there are a couple ways to do this, and this is one of the hardest parts of putting these knives back together. There's a great deal of force. You don't have much to hold on to. And again, since you only have half the chassis, you've got these pins sticking up out of the chassis, and they can splay out a little bit. So, how do you get this? Well, if you've got really monkey gorilla fingers, you can kind of push these in, and if your hands are a little beat up from making knives all day, you can't do it. So here's how I do it. I hold the blade at 90 degrees. You don't do this, what I'm about to do, without tape on the blade. I take the handle of my brush, I lay it in here comfortably in this notch. I've got this surface that's kind of grippy, not slippery. I push down on that spring until it opens up and gets out of the way, and I can put my knife in there. Now I'm going to show you a different way of doing it, okay? So we'll hold down on the spring, rotate, rock, pull it out. You can also hold this out all the way flat like so, and you can see here that the spring is down inside the profile of the handle. So I'm going to try and do this laying out flat so you can see here. We're going to push that spring out so that we can drop this in. Grabbed onto one of my hairs. And then push it down. So that's another way to do it. I'm going to show you a third way to do this. We'll take this out. Let's say you don't have really strong hands. Let's say you're a young lady who's new to knives and your hands aren't quite that strong. Or you're an accountant and you got nice little soft fingers, or you're a surgeon, you don't want to hurt yourself. Take a small pair of a small crescent wrench, and then put a little, you kind of have it grab onto the spring right there, and then what you do, kind of hold with your thumb or have somebody help you, kind of hold this, and you see I'm twisting the spring. Twist the spring out, let the blade drop in place. That's another way to do it, and that requires more coordination but less strength. Okay, so now we've got our knife in. Now before you go any further, take something soft like the end of your cleaning brush and just push everything down in position, okay? Next, we'll put in our spine. Now, before you do that, a little drop of oil here, 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 a little bit here, a little bit here. Now we're going to put our spine. You'll notice the spine, this thing's under tension right now. It's pushing these pins outward. So all you got to do is put your finger under one side, start this, don't push all the way down here, just start it, and you'll see it's not lining up. You push right in the middle here until it lines up. It'll line up and pop on there, because you're bending the handle, and when you bend the handle, the pins get closer together, okay? Now you see this is the tension that these pins are under. We need to undo, or we need to load up that center piece. Just push, hold on to the blade firmly, a little downward pressure, a little upward pressure so it doesn't slip out. Holding in place, just push until it drops on. Push the spine all the way down. Now before you do anything else, take your spring, drop of oil, oil, oil against these large flat surfaces. Drop that in position. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to work our tools in. I always put the defining tool, the bottle opener always goes next to the blade, okay? I put the defining tool across from the blade. If you think like that, then your nail nicks will be outboard. So the first one you can put in no problem. Second one, a lot of times you've got the leverage and stability here to just take your thumb and push it out and it'll drop right in. If you have a hard time with that, then just do what I did before. You can either use your crescent wrench or you can put it at an angle and push in here with this. You know, kind of holding onto the taped blade, stabilizing it, and drop your tool in. Once you have your tools in, everybody wants to put this pin in. Don't do it yet. It's the only thing you do out of sequence. If you put that in, now you've got 4 pins to try and line up when you put your last liner in. Grab your last titanium liner, drop of oil, oil around the pivot, you know, your central spring pivot pin, oil and oil. These are totally symmetrical. You can use them however you like. You want to get this started on the second pin, and then I generally push on the side of the table for that last line up. Okay? Now everything's in, now drop your pin in. Sometimes there's a little tiny bit of burr or something could be grabbing and holding that pin up a little high. If so, just take your plastic, push it down till it's almost flush. It should be sticking up a very small amount because that engages the inside of each handle scale in this hole a very small amount. Okay? Once you've got it all done, push everything down as best you can so that your pivots are sticking up a little bit. You want those to go up, and again, this has got some Easter eggs for you to find. You want to put your logo on your right thumb, put it in position, and you want to feel it kind of, you want those screw holes, the bore, the main bore, you want that to lock in to the pivot. Once you've done that, titanium screws. I drive it because I'm trying to set those counter bores down in the small amount of the pivot that's sticking up. I put the screw down on there and I let it touch. That way I can move my hands around and my part's not flopping around. Now, tuning a knife is a big deal. There's some personality and there's some opinion to this. What I would do is put your finger, a lot of times when you put this together, the screw is going to be sticking out a little bit on the back here, the pivot screw head. So you just put your finger on it, and you can feel as you tighten this, you'll feel that head suck in on the back side. You'll feel it suck down. So you tighten this screw, and you're going to say, oh, it's turning, it's turning, it's turning, and then it goes boom, it hits a wall. Don't keep turning it. You'll crush out this plastic. You just get to there, and we'll do that on both sides. Put your finger on the back, feel the knife kind of suck together, and feel you hit a wall. Now, that's too tight, okay? The parts won't move. You want to back that screw off a little. When you back that screw off, remember this stuff's all precision fit and it may not just freely back off. So you back it off and then you wiggle your tools a little bit and it kind of lets everything settle in. So what I do from here is I back off about an 1/8 or a 16th of a turn. So a quarter, right, is going to be here. An 1/8 is going to be here. And a 16th is here. So I go between a 16th and an 1/8, somewhere right in there. You feel a little release point. And then you listen to the knife, you move it and you feel it. It should have nice walk and talk. It should. It's like right now I've got it too tight. So I'm going to back it off a little bit more. Now it's snapping and before it's getting into position, the tool will jump away from my hand. And that's what you want, okay? Let's do the same to the other side. We've backed it off. That snaps pretty nicely. All right, so now this is where you kind of unshroud your blade and just, you know, be careful because this is where you can give yourself stitches, and I'll try not to do that while I'm on camera with you. You want to get it to see if the blade jerks out of your hand. So blade should have jerked shut by now. So I've got it hidden here too tight. I back it off, less than a 16th of a turn. Now I'll open the blade up, give it a little side load back and forth just to relieve the space, and let's see if it jerks shut. Actually feels pretty nice. And you don't need to make it loosey-goosey because it'll kind of settle in over time. And that's putting your knife back together, okay? If you need to use any Loctite, if you feel compelled to use Loctite, put a little blue Loctite on there so you don't do damage. And that is how to take apart your knife, clean it, and put it back together again. You can measure people by the things, the talismans that they surround themselves with in their life to accomplish things. You've picked an awesome tool. ASK is an amazing product. It's got so much modularity and flexibility. You can cater it to fit you and your personality. Take good care of your tools. They'll last you forever. You'll leave them to your kids.